Uncle Harold knows what not to do, my nephew Miles said as rainwater pooled beside his new garage. He used to be a contractor before that business failed. His neighbors laughed politely and Miles handed me a shovel as if the joke settled my history. He did not know that my crews had built his house and 16 others on the same street. The drainage plans inside my truck carried my signature, and the problem in his yard had appeared 22 years after we passed inspection. My name is Harold Bennett. I was 68, semi-retired and still licensed as a general contractor. My hands were slower than they had been, but I could read a roofline, a foundation crack, or the path water wanted to take. Construction had made me comfortable. It had also humbled me enough to distrust easy explanations. Miles was 33 and worked in software sales. He and his wife, Jenna, had recently purchased the brick house in Willow Ridge, a neighborhood of 32 homes built in phases around a curved street. They loved the mature trees, deep lots, and wide front porches. They did not know my connection to the place because the closing documents named the developer, not every builder. I had been one of 3 contractors on Willow Ridge. Bennett Residential built 17 houses during the first 2 phases, including the home Miles bought. My company installed foundations, framing, exterior drainage, and finish work through supervised subcontractors. The developers sold each home, so buyers usually remembered Willow Ridge Development rather than us. The story Miles knew concerned an earlier company. When I was 39, I operated Bennett & Cole Commercial with a partner named Ray Cole. We expanded too quickly, accepted a school renovation with an unrealistic schedule, and carried costs while the district disputed change orders. Then Ray hid payroll tax notices until penalties had multiplied. The company closed. I sold equipment, paid employees, negotiated with suppliers, and entered a structured personal bankruptcy. Some subcontractors received less than they were owed. That fact remained painful. Ray's deception mattered, but I had signed documents and failed to monitor the accounts. I never described myself as an innocent victim. For 2 years, I worked as a project superintendent for another builder. I rebuilt savings, repaid 2 small suppliers beyond the legal requirement, and completed financial control courses. When I started Bennett Residential, my wife Louise handled payments with an outside accountant reviewing every month. No partner or owner could hide tax notices again. Willow Ridge came during our 6th year. The developer wanted traditional houses at controlled prices. We negotiated allowances, inspection gates, soil testing, and drainage responsibility before breaking ground. The street sloped gently toward a municipal channel, so every lot depended on connected swales. One owner blocking water could affect 3 neighbors. Our first phase contained 9 homes. Rain exposed a low area behind Lot 7 before landscaping. We removed soil, regraded the yard, and delayed sod until the county engineer approved it. The correction cost us $12,000 and protected the next lot. Construction quality was often a sequence of problems caught before owners saw them. Bennett Residential eventually built more than 400 homes and several small medical offices. I sold a majority interest to 2 longtime managers when I was 62. I kept a minority share in 3 commercial properties. Years of retained earnings and careful investments placed my net worth above $6 million. Though most relatives still pictured the failed company. Louise died 3 years before Miles bought the house. Afterward, I stopped correcting family stories unless facts affected someone's safety or money. I did not want every dinner to become a defense of my career. Silence felt easier, but it allowed the worst chapter to become the only chapter younger relatives knew. The pooling water appeared after Miles installed a wider driveway and a detached workshop. His contractor added a low retaining edge along the side lot. During light rain, nothing seemed wrong. A heavy storm sent water toward the garage, across the new pavement, and into the neighbor's planting bed. Miles organized a Saturday workday with 2 neighbors. My sister invited me because she thought my old experience might help. I arrived with boots, a level, measuring tape, and the original habit of watching before digging. The water line on the brick showed a path different from the one described in Miles's text message. I asked who designed the driveway grade. Miles said the concrete company handled it. I asked whether the homeowners association approved the retaining edge. He said it was landscaping, not a structure. Then he made the joke about my failed business and gave me the shovel. I put the shovel down. Before we move soil, we need the approved site plan and elevations. Miles rolled his eyes. The house is 22 years old. The original builder obviously got it wrong. Maybe, I said. But water changed direction after new work. We should measure both conditions. One neighbor, Pariah Shah, supported that approach. Water had never entered her bed before the driveway project. Another neighbor remembered a shallow grass channel that crews had filled while widening the pavement. Miles said the channel had looked like poor landscaping. I explained that it might have been a swale carrying runoff between lots. He asked why I sounded so certain. I told him I had worked in the neighborhood. He assumed I meant as a subcontractor after my failure. The group returned to moving sandbags, and I did not force the correction in front of them. That afternoon, I opened storage boxes in my office. Bennett Residential had digitized most records, but Willow Ridge predated the current system. I found grading plans, inspection releases, subcontractor certificates, warranty logs, and photographs taken before sod. Lot 14 was Miles's house. My signature appeared on the builder certification. The plan showed a 3-foot drainage easement along the side boundary. The original swale dropped 7 inches from the rear corner toward the street inlet. Photographs showed the route clearly. County inspection records confirmed the grade before occupancy. The new driveway covered most of it, and the retaining edge blocked the remaining path. I called Miles and asked to meet privately. Jenna joined us at their kitchen table. I placed the plan, photographs, and inspection certificate in front of them. Miles read the address twice. Then he looked at the builder name printed beneath the developer's logo. "You built this house." "My company did," I said, "and 16 others on this street." Jenna asked whether that meant I was responsible for the water. I said responsibility depended on present facts. Original work had passed inspection, but hidden settlement or later changes could still matter. We needed an independent civil engineer, not a family verdict. Miles became defensive. He said I had waited to embarrass him after the joke. I told him I had waited because announcing ownership history beside a flooded garage would not improve drainage. The documents mattered now because they identified the intended water path. He apologized halfway. "I should not have called you failed, but your company did fail." "One company did," I said. "That is true. It is not the whole record. We agreed to hire an engineer chosen from 3 names, none connected to my current company." Miles paid the initial inspection fee because the issue followed his project. I offered to reimburse half if the engineer found a material original defect. That kept my confidence from becoming a free professional conclusion. The engineer, Dana Ruiz, surveyed 4 lots and reviewed both permits. Her report found that the original swale met the approved plan. The driveway widening raised pavement near the garage and removed 5 inches of drainage depth. The retaining edge created a dam. Minor soil settlement contributed, but it would not have caused pooling without the new work. Dana recommended removing part of the edge, cutting a channel beside the driveway, adding a graded inlet, and restoring slope toward the street. She also recommended checking 2 downstream lots because years of garden additions had narrowed the connected route. Miles wanted to send the report directly to the concrete contractor with a demand for full payment. I advised him to review the contract first. The proposal described driveway work but excluded drainage design. That did not automatically remove responsibility, especially if the contractor altered an obvious swale, but the allocation required evidence. Jenna found an email where she had asked whether the side channel could be filled to create more parking width. The contractor replied that it should be fine if the retaining edge kept soil away. That message changed the discussion. The contractor had offered an opinion without checking the recorded easement. Their insurer contacted the contractor's insurer. The Homeowners Association also acknowledged that its approval had missed the drainage plan. After negotiation, the contractor's insurer paid 60% of the correction. The association contributed 15%, and Miles and Jenna paid the remainder for upgraded surface materials they chose. I did not perform the repair. Bennett Residential could have bid, but my family relationship and prior connection created unnecessary conflict. Dana prepared a simple detail, and an independent drainage contractor completed the work. I attended the final water test only because Miles asked. The test sent controlled water from the rear yard through the restored channel and into the street system. No water reached the garage or Priya's planting bed. Miles watched the flow and said the original builder had known what he was doing. I reminded him that the original builder had also made mistakes on other projects and survived by correcting them. The homeowners association requested a neighborhood meeting. Several owners had patios, fences, sheds, or gardens near the drainage easements. Rumors were spreading that every house built by a failed contractor might have hidden defects. I agreed to attend with Dana, provided she led the technical explanation. At the meeting, Miles introduced me as his uncle and the builder of half the street. The phrase produced a louder reaction than I wanted. One resident asked whether I was a millionaire developer who had concealed himself. I explained the difference between the developer, the contractors, and my later business ownership. Dana showed the approved drainage network without identifying Miles's financial dispute. She explained that original grades, settlement, landscaping, and later construction all could change water. Owners received instructions for locating easements and requesting reviews before alterations. The purpose was prevention, not assigning one villain to every puddle. An older resident named George raised a warranty complaint about cracked garage concrete from 17 years earlier. Our records showed that Bennett Residential had repaired part of the slab during year 2. The current crack appeared elsewhere. I offered no new warranty, but I arranged an independent evaluation at cost because the history deserved clarity. The crack was cosmetic and related to normal shrinkage. George disliked the answer, but appreciated having a written report. That exchange reminded Miles that respect did not mean granting every claim. A contractor could listen carefully, document conditions, and still say no. My former managers heard about the meeting and worried that old homeowners would contact the current company. We created a response protocol separating expired warranties, safety concerns, maintenance questions, and possible latent defects. The company would not accept unlimited liability, but it would not hide behind time when credible safety evidence appeared. That policy led to one real correction. A resident reported a loose exterior stair rail on another Bennett-built house. The rail had been replaced by a remodeling company, so it was not our original work. Still, the current company secured it without charge while the owner contacted the remodeler. Preventing a fall mattered more than winning the first invoice. Miles began asking about my career without treating the answers as a defense. He visited the medical office project where I retained ownership. He saw the tenant improvement reserve, accessibility upgrades, and maintenance logs. He also saw that being worth millions did not mean every building produced effortless cash. I showed him the final statement from Bennett and Cole Commercial. He asked why I kept it. I said success could become dangerous if it edited failure out of memory. The unpaid supplier balances, tax penalties, and equipment sale taught me controls that later protected hundreds of employees and buyers. Miles asked whether Ray Cole had ever apologized. He had, years later, after recovering from addiction. I accepted the apology, but did not restart a partnership. Forgiveness and renewed financial authority were different decisions. That distinction helped Miles understand why I could acknowledge failure without living inside its label. Jenna was more direct. She said the family had allowed the bankruptcy story to become entertainment because I never objected. I admitted that privacy had protected me from bragging, but it had also left Louise's work invisible. She had built the accounting controls and reviewed every closing package. The later success belonged partly to her discipline. At the next family dinner, Miles corrected the story before I could. A cousin referred to my contracting disaster, and Miles said one company had failed before I built another that completed hundreds of projects. He did not mention my net worth. The correction centered work and accountability rather than money. I thanked him afterward but told him he did not need to become my public defender. He said he was correcting his own repetition, not protecting me. That answer felt healthier. Family repair should not create a new obligation to praise. The street repairs survived the next 2 major storms. Priya sent the group a photograph of dry mulch beside her flowers. Miles resisted turning it into a victory announcement. He had learned that drainage worked best when nothing dramatic happened. The association added drainage plan review to its alteration process. Owners could still widen driveways or add patios, but submissions had to show water paths and easements. Dana trained the review committee for one evening. The cost was modest compared with one flooded garage. Bennett Residential placed its old Willow Ridge records in a digital archive. Every property file included original plans, inspection releases, approved warranty repairs, and known later contacts. We could not guarantee perfect history, but we could make evidence easier to find than family rumor. Miles later asked me to evaluate a small rental property he was considering. I declined to tell him whether to buy it after a 20-minute walkthrough. I gave him a list of inspections, reserves, rental assumptions, and legal questions. He joked that I had turned one answer into 12 assignments. "That is construction and ownership," I said. "The expensive part is usually the question you skipped." He did not buy that property. The sewer scope found a damaged line, and the seller would not adjust the price. 6 months later, he purchased a simpler duplex with a larger reserve. I invested nothing in it. His decision needed to remain his, including the possibility of ordinary mistakes. Our relationship did not become centered on business. We returned to fishing twice each summer, and Miles still teased me about carrying 3 levels in my truck. I teased him about checking drainage before admiring kitchen counters. The jokes became mutual, because they no longer reduced an entire life to its worst chapter. One fishing trip gave him the courage to ask a harder question. He wanted to know whether I had ever considered quitting construction after Bennett and Cole collapsed. I told him I had spent months avoiding streets where former suppliers might see me. Shame made ordinary errands feel like inspections I could never pass. The first supplier I repaid beyond the bankruptcy settlement was a family-owned lumberyard. The remaining balance was only $4,800, but writing that check took nearly a year of savings. The owner did not praise me. He deposited it, shook my hand, and said better controls mattered more than guilt. I carried that sentence into the second company. Louise established those controls in practical ways. Checks above $5,000 required 2 approvals. Payroll taxes moved to a separate account every week. Job cost reports were reviewed before we accepted another project. Growth slowed, but cash shortages stopped arriving as surprises. The systems that looked cautious from outside became the foundation of later scale. When Willow Ridge Development first invited us to bid, I nearly declined because the contract covered several homes at once. Louise separated the work into phase gates. We could finish 9 homes, review costs, and refuse the next phase if assumptions failed. That structure prevented the kind of expansion that had damaged the first company. Miles listened without trying to convert the story into inspiration. He said the details sounded exhausting. They were. Recovery was not a clean rise powered by confidence. It was repetition, oversight, smaller promises, and accepting that some people would never work with me again. A second chance did not restore every relationship. That history influenced how I treated the concrete contractor who altered Miles's drainage. The mistake was serious, but one bad opinion did not prove the entire company was dishonest. Its owner cooperated with the insurer, paid the deductible, and added easement checks to future estimates. Accountability worked better when it left room for corrected practice. Dana returned 1 year later for a neighborhood drainage walk. 11 owners attended with copies of their site plans. She found 2 fence panels blocking minor channels and a raised garden bed, narrowing another swale. None had caused property damage yet. Owners corrected them before the next storm, saving arguments that otherwise would have begun after water crossed the boundary. Miles volunteered to maintain the association's digital plan index. His software background made the records searchable by lot and project type. He added reminders that the documents were historical references, not substitutes for current engineering. The nephew who had dismissed old plans became the person helping neighbors locate them. The association paid him nothing, and he asked for no credit beyond reimbursement for storage. I appreciated that restraint. His original joke had placed himself above work he did not understand. The volunteer project reversed that habit quietly. He became useful without needing the neighborhood to witness a public transformation. Jenna also changed the way they planned improvements. Before adding a rain garden, she consulted Dana and invited Priya to review the boundary. The garden slowed roof runoff and added native plants without blocking the shared route. The yard became more attractive because design respected the system beneath it. During construction of the rain garden, a delivery driver cracked one corner of the new driveway. Miles documented the damage, obtained 2 estimates, and negotiated a repair with the supplier. He did not accuse the original builder, the association, or the weather. Evidence had become his first response instead of his final concession. I attended the repair inspection and said very little. Watching him handle the issue professionally gave me more satisfaction than hearing him tell relatives I had built the street. Reputation could change in one dramatic sentence, but judgment changed through repeated decisions when no audience expected a reveal. My former managers later asked whether Miles might join the company. I said he had shown no interest in becoming a contractor, and family learning did not create a recruitment obligation. He was effective in software sales and increasingly careful with property. Respecting my work did not require him to imitate it. That boundary protected both of us. I did not need a nephew inside Bennett Residential to prove that the family finally understood me. He did not need access to my company or wealth as payment for apologizing. We could share knowledge without turning reconciliation into inheritance planning. I remained proud of Willow Ridge, but I did not claim every good result personally. Carpenters, masons, inspectors, engineers, suppliers, office staff, and Louise all shaped those houses. When I said my company built half the street, the word company mattered. The homes had also changed after we left. Owners replaced roofs, opened walls, planted trees, added rooms, and redirected water. A builder's responsibility could be lasting without being limitless. Honest evaluation required resisting both convenient extremes, blaming every current problem on the past, or pretending original work could never fail. My wealth came from the second company, property holdings, and decades of retained earnings. It did not erase the bankruptcy. The bankruptcy did not erase the 400 homes. Both records belonged to me, and neither could be understood through one family joke. I updated my own estate notes after that year. The records explained which investments remained active, which guarantees had expired, and where company archives were stored. Louise and I had learned that families make poor decisions when important facts arrive as rumors. Clear documents were another form of maintenance. Those notes did not promise Miles a company, a building, or a rescue. They simply prevented secrecy from turning into confusion later. Quiet wealth still required communication when other people would eventually carry its responsibilities. Miles eventually framed a copy of the original lot photograph for his workshop. It showed bare soil, survey stakes, and the shallow swale before grass. He placed no caption beneath it. The image reminded him that invisible systems often existed before new owners decided an empty space served no purpose. My nephew called me a failed contractor because he knew a true fragment and mistook it for the whole structure. Learning that I had built half his street surprised him. But the repair mattered more than the reveal. We measured the water, followed evidence, divided responsibility fairly, and improved the rules for everyone. Success was not proving I had never failed. It was showing what I built after I did.